best in radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You're listening to the Financial Survival Network. It's Kerry, Lutz, and we've got Bill Holter of milesfranklin.com on with us now. He's recently returned from the Money Show in New Orleans, where he got to check out Alan Greenspan's latest rantings, along with a debate between Doug Casey and Chris Powell as to the extent and nature of manipulation and suppression of gold prices and much more. So Bill, Alan Greenspan, now he's basically retired and he gets to put in work on his legacy and try to escape responsibility for everything that the financial system is going through now. Takeaway from him? Well,
basically he's just trying to clean up his legacy. He originally was a stout Ayn Rand follower, wrote a long dissertation back in 1966 on how gold is money and basically how a fiat system couldn't survive. He knew that then, he knew it while he was at the Fed, and he knows it now. He kind of explained that his Ayn Rand days, he lived in a theoretical world, and then when he got to the Fed, he had to live in the practical world. And he said actually back in, I'm thinking it was the mid-early 70s, he wrote a piece on farmer subsidies were no good for anyone, including farmers. And when he wrote that and put that out, the people in Washington went nuts. And he said from that point forward, he really needed to conform his actions, even though he says he didn't change his views. The word I would use is he sold out.
Yeah, well, and what was his explanation for his change of behavior?
Well, because the pressure he was getting from Washington.
Yeah, so it was put up or shut up.
Right, it was either conform or, you're not part of the Klan.
Mm-hmm. So,
and he learned that early on, and to me, it's to go from a hard money advocate and really understanding it to chairman of the Federal Reserve. That is just selling your soul.
Yeah, well, there's a reason they become chairman of the Federal Reserve, right?
Well, yeah, it was understood before he was nominated, I'm sure.
Yeah, and he was the Maestro, right? He
became the Maestro because easy money and low interest rates made for good times. The only problem is, and he used this in his own words, he said, low interest rates and easy money creates the scenario where you eat your own seed corn, which pulls future demand and makes it current demand, and then makes for a lower standard of living later. He understands all this. He's not a dumb guy.
No, not a dumb guy, but
just disingenuous, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I guess you get to a point when you're there, you're either going to toe the party line or you're going to leave, right?
You don't get there unless you're going to toe the party line. I think the interesting things that I took from that interview, it was a two-part thing. The first part was with just a one-on-one with Gary Alexander. He was the moderator. And then the second part was a round table with Porter Stansberry, Mark Faber, himself, and Gary Alexander was the moderator. A couple of things that I took away from this was he came right out and said that the Fed is not independent, because Gary asked him something about the independence of the Fed, and Greenspan's reply was, I never said the Fed was independent. So that was really interesting because, that's in your basic Finance 101 books in college, is that the Fed is an independent entity, they're not elected, they're appointed, and nobody can put political pressure on them. And he also said that the Fed has pretty much been forced to buy up treasuries. He didn't use the word monetize, which of course that's what it is, but he said that they've been forced. The 2008 housing crisis was not the Fed's fault. He said it was Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac's fault. They were subsidized by the government. They lowered credit standards. We had the MBS and HUD and affordable housing, and it was not easy money that did it. And he also said that the fact that Congress is the one who has the purse strings, it's the whole problem that we're in right now is because of Congress, because they've overspent, and the Fed had to step up and purchase the treasuries that the Treasury issued. Otherwise, in his words, interest rates would have exploded and the system would have blown out. Those were his words.
Yeah, so that's a little bit of legacy polishing there too, huh?
Yeah, it's not our fault. I mean, well, all he had to do was allow interest rates to go up and cool off the kettle. But no, we kept turning the heat up higher and higher. Or
never let interest rates get that low in the first place, right?
Right. Well, but they forced rates down. He forced them down in the early 2000s, and then of course Bernanke forced them down again.
Yeah. So
it's inflate or die. He understands.
Yeah, but it's disingenuous if you just allowed interest rates to follow their, to go to their natural level. You wouldn't have had any of this.
Right, which is what Paul Volcker did. He targeted the money supply and kept that at whatever growth rate. I forget what the number was.
Mm-hmm.
But he basically said, to hell with interest rates, I'm going to let them go to wherever they're going to go via Mother Nature, based on the money supply target that we're going to grow money supply at. And of course, rates went up to 20%.
Yeah.
And caused a double dip recession, severe recession. But I think by the time 91 came, and especially by the time 2001 came, they realized after the 1987 crash that they could never have another real panic, because it would basically take the system, which would of course take the government's finances with it.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't let it happen.
Yeah.
But I think 91, in my opinion, 91 was the last viable chance to allow Mother Nature to work. And 2001 was the absolute line in the sand. They didn't let that one go through to fruition. So we can never have any type of turn down like that without the government stepping up and trying to save everything. And this time, of course, the government can't do it. The system's too big, and the Fed, Treasury, etc., are too fragile. Their balance sheets are too fragile.
Yeah. So he was making a lot of excuses for everything. It's everyone's fault but his.
For the most part, yeah.
So he never.
It was interesting. Yeah. It was interesting to watch, but he was just somebody trying to clean up his legacy.
Yeah. So he never heard of being an enabler, huh?
I'll tell you what was really a shame. Chris Powell and a whole bunch of other people had sent Gary Alexander the question that they wanted asked at the end.
Mm.
And that question was about Greenspan's testimony in 1998. I think it was July of 98 to Congress, where he said, and this is a quote, "Central banks stand ready
to buy." Yeah.
No, not to buy.
To lease.
That's what Gary Alexander said.
To lease gold.
And
right.
To lease gold in increasing quantities should the price rise.
Right. Yes.
And
I remember that.
While Greenspan was answering Mark Faber's, they each got one question to Greenspan. So while Greenspan was answering it, Gary was like frantically working his iPad or whatever the electronic device was they had, I think trying to find the email. And he used, when he came out with the question, he kind of stuttered a little bit, and he used the word buy instead of lease.
Yeah.
And of course, Greenspan said, "I never said that. I don't recall it." And, that's truthful. He didn't say that.
Yeah.
And by using the word buy instead of lease, it changes the question altogether.
Yeah.
Everybody was up in arms. I think Chris Powell and I are the only two I talked to believe it was an honest mistake by Gary Alexander. Everyone else feels that it was
set up,
and he let him off the hook. I don't buy it myself, but.
So did the panel get to talk to each other? Did Faber get to say anything to Greenspan?
Well, there would be a question from Gary Alexander, and then Porter Stansberry would answer, Faber would answer, and then Greenspan. And at the very end, Porter Stansberry and Faber, they asked somewhat similar questions regarding bubbles and would you do anything different? And Greenspan came up with the old meme of you can't tell when he used the word no one can tell the timing of a bubble, and basically who could have seen it. And I just started laughing because I picked up my family and left the country at the end of 2006 knowing something was coming down the pike.
And then the Austrians saw it. The Austrians saw it clear as day.
Right. There's more people than I can count on my
Peter Schiff
fingers and toes. Yeah, and Peter Schiff was at the he spoke. I didn't get to see him, but he did speak at the conference.
Yeah, Peter Schiff saw it, and we got it on CNN, CNBC, where they're like screaming at him to get off and laughing at him and denigrating.
They were laughing at him.
Yeah, we know. So, that's disingenuous.
Did you see him on CNBC? I think it was yesterday or the day before. They were really giving him a hard time because he said a couple of years ago he thought we were going to $5,000 gold, and they were just dancing all over him, trying to make him look like a fool. It was $1,700 then, now it's $1,200. Where's your $5,000 gold? You're wrong. You've ruined everybody. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And Peter Schiff, he defended himself pretty good. If you get a chance, pull up that video. I think it's on CNBC, but I know you can find it on Zero Hedge.
Yeah, we'll take a look at it. And hey, I've always been real wary of junior miners for a lot of different reasons. Not the least of which is that a lot of them come from Vancouver, and there are people who are masters at playing the Canadian regulatory scheme off of the U.S. regulatory scheme and making a fortune off the two. With that said, I cleaned up in 2011 and managed to get out of them at exactly the right time, and I still don't know how I did it. Not because I'm really good at that, because I'm not. But with that said, they will have their day once again. There's no question in my mind, but that isn't in my mind why you buy gold and silver.
No, the miners are a speculation on gold and silver. Gold and silver themselves are savings.
Yeah, and insurance.
Right.
All in one. And so, yep. It's interesting.
Getting back to the conference, the other interesting session that I saw was an interview a debate between Chris Powell and Doug Casey.
Right.
I don't know if you know their personalities, but
I know Doug Casey personally, and sure, I'm well familiar with.
Yeah, if you've seen them, Chris Powell is strictly business. He is a journalist.
Very sharp guy.
Dots his I's and crosses his T's, and everything's factual. And Doug Casey just shoots from the hip. So it was kind of a mismatch in that manner. And the format they had, each one had 7 minutes to speak, and then there was a 4-minute rebuttal, and they never got to go at each other. So it was a non-debate debate. But Casey started right off and said everything's manipulated. Of course, gold and silver are manipulated, but he said they're not suppressed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I really had to laugh because really what he did was give his opinion. He gave no hard facts whatsoever, and Chris Powell was only able to, in the time he had, to get through about a quarter of the facts that GATA has dug up over the years, that each and every one is a smoking gun, and you put them all together, and I mean, it's the barrel of a gun.
Oh yeah, it's in my mind. There's been so much that's come out recently, and look, when the German Financial Regulatory Commission says that it's manipulated, okay,
right, BaFin.
Do you just ignore that and say it means nothing?
Right. Why would they say anything?
And then when the English, the Brits fine Barclays for manipulating it once, I'm sure they only did it once, right? Only happened once, right?
Yeah.
So, come on. So, like, no question, lots happening there that we don't even know about. We could just watch the day-to-day machinations of it and know that a lot's going on there. Well,
what was it, 116 out of 122 or 124 nights where the access market opened,
yeah.
Gold and silver were down? That's not even possible. That's not even possible in a rigged casino.
Yeah, Andy Hoffman, your colleague there, has documented it, and then those identical chart movements, and
day after day or night after night.
Yeah, you just can't be chance. And then you say, well, okay, so they're doing that. Why? Why are they doing it?
Because it's on fire behind the scenes. That's why.
Yeah, and then the fact that they feel the need to do it, that's the scary part to me. So that they actually need to do it.
They've needed to do it since 1996. That's when all this started, with Robert Rubin's strong dollar.
Uh-huh.
It's all about perception of the dollar. It's all about shining the dollar in a good light.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And yeah, it just it's making a lot of people doubt the efficacy of gold now. I'll tell you that. I get tons and tons of emails about it. And I said, look.
Right, it scared a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's been bad for bullion dealers' business. I mean, I talked to Ross Hansen, head of Northwest Territorial Mint, largest privately owned mint in North America. Big business. Said business last year was bad. He doesn't make any bones about it. It was down. But it's not like he's staying up nights worrying about the price of gold.
Look at the mint sales, though. In October, the amount of silver eagles with 7 days to go is already a monthly record.
Yeah, where is that? Where are those coins going here, Bill?
I don't know. We are seeing a bunch. We've seen a bunch of in the last couple months. Miles Franklin has seen good demand.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think the month of June was a weak month, but August, September, October have been good months.
Uh-huh.
Well, I can tell you, because I know you do want to talk about Russia at some point today.
Sure.
Russia just announced, I think it was for September, that they bought 1.2 million ounces of gold.
Right.
If you recall, earlier in the year, their run rate was about 300,000 ounces of gold per month. Now, isn't that interesting that we put sanctions on them back in July?
Yeah.
So if these sanctions were working and all of a sudden Russia was just bleeding and hemorrhaging, where did they have the money to come up with to buy 1.2 million ounces?
Yeah.
And the month before that, I think it was 500,000 or 600,000 and 400,000 before that. So their buying rate is moving higher.
Fascinating, huh?
Well, you got to think that that's not exactly what they thought the sanctions were going to do. Was going to increase their demand. Now, this could be money coming through China. They could be proxies. Who knows? All I know is that this is about 3 or 4 times what they were buying a year ago.
Yeah, fascinating. And we're not going to know till all the smoke is cleared either.
That's true.
We're just not going to. There's certain things that you just can't know, and this is one of them. But be that as it may, how many people who are selling their gold, Bill?
I don't know anyone.
Yeah,
I've not come across anyone who's even sold 1 ounce of gold in the last year.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Same here. So there you have it. Might be worried about gold, the price, the day-to-day action in it, but, doesn't mean that you're selling it. And
well, if you do sell it, you're selling it below what it costs to pull out of the ground.
Yeah, exactly.
That does not add up.
No. And so Russia's expanding their reserves, and now the Indians are back buying it pretty aggressively too, aren't they?
Right, and they are talking about lowering the tariff, which will just increase the demand. Just between India and China alone, they're buying up every ounce that's pulled out of the earth. Right. Yep. So, what about European demand? What about Australian demand? North American, South American, even African? I mean, China and India, just those two countries alone, are buying up all of the current production. So you got to ask yourself, where is the additional supply coming from? And it can only be coming from one place. That's where it's being stored. Mm-hmm. Western Vault.
Yeah. Yep. I would tend to agree with you there. I don't see where else it could be.
Well, there's no telling how much more is left. All I can tell you is Frank Fanaroso did a study back in, I think it was 2001, that forecast somewhere in the 10, 12-year range out, which would have been 2011 to 13 in that neighborhood, would be critical mass. He figured at that point the central banks would have gone through their gold, and that was at the current run rate back then. So we've got to be very close to fumes, if not already running on fumes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
you could ask the Germans.
Yeah. Where's the German gold? On that note, we got to wrap up, Bill, but find Bill's work at milesfranklin.com. Subscribe to his and Andy's regular missives there, their newsletters, and go over to Financial Survival Network. Subscribe to our newsletter. Bill, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on, and thanks for that wrap up there on the money conference at New Orleans. It was fascinating.
My pleasure, Kerry. Good to be here.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
People have been using gold and silver to protect their wealth for thousands of years. Shouldn't you? That's why I go to Cloud Hard Assets. Tom Cloud has been in the business for 38 years. Call him now at 800-247-2812. Tom's service is outstanding, and you can buy with complete confidence. Order today, and you'll have your metal in your hands in 10 days or less. Tom takes the guesswork out of what to buy, and you'll buy at the lowest possible prices. And as a special to FSN listeners, you'll get free shipping and insurance. So call Tom today at 800-247-2812. That's 800-247-2812, or find him on the web at cloudhardassets.com and tell him Kerry sent you.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.